Hi everyone, this is Tom Stevenson, and this is the first in a series of videos that aims to jumpstart your learning of some of the new ION modules that you will find in the Power Monitoring Expert version 8 release. We're going to start in this video with the email module, and if you've been using the Solutions Expert community in the last year, you may have seen a labs video with an earlier incarnation of this module, and a lot of the feedback that many of you helped provide helped shape this module, so we thank you sincerely for that. And essentially the learning objectives of this video is to provide you with an overview of the capabilities of the module so that you can quickly start incorporating them in your ION frameworks. How we'll start off today is the status quo. If you're using the launch module today in PME 7.2 for notifications, then you're also using something third party to actually send the mail, whether it be BLAT or mail to or something custom you have written. However you're doing it, I know it's quite tedious to set up, and that's the real impetus for this module. We have some native email capabilities now built right in. It can be used as a drop-in replacement. So if you have an existing framework, it shouldn't be too difficult to delete your launch modules and fly in an email module. And that's how we're going to start the beginning of this video, is getting a simple notification out right away. Now typically we would link a trigger to an email module, which is coming from something like a setpoint module, but for the purposes of control, I'm just going to link an external pulse so I can send an email on demand. So that's the first step I did. I linked a trigger. The other data I will need right away is my SMTP server host, which could be a Gmail host. It could be, in my case, a Lotus Notes host. It could be an Office 365 IP address or a name. In this case, I'll just leave it at vip@powermonitoringexpert.com. I know that will cause problems for some depending on what your email provider is. So you may want to change that to a legal name in your organization. I know I can leave it. In this case, I'm going to send the email to myself. If I needed multiple recipients, I could just type comma and continue on. I'm just sending it to myself. If I wanted to carbon copy or blind carbon, there's those fields that behave the same. Again, comma separated for multiple addresses. And essentially that's the minimum I need to do to send an email. In Vista now, I just set up an external pulse for that external pulse module. I will click that. If I move now to my email, we will see that I received an email that says alarm. It came from vip@powermonitoringexpert.com to Tom Stevenson, and the subject was alarm. The message was your message here. So not too helpful, but we've tested the mechanism in principle. The other aspect of this, your telco provider may provide SMS capabilities as well. So I know that with TELUS, who is my telco provider, I can send an email to my cell phone number at message.telus.net, and I will now receive an SMS message on my phone. So that's another means of getting an SMS notification out if that's desired. You'll just need to look up if your telco provides that service. Okay, another point that was raised was the ability to send an authenticated email. So if you want to use Gmail as the server host, you're going to need to send a secure authenticated email, in which case there is a field to turn that on, true, for enable SSL, and then a username and password are required. And let's just say my password is 123 for fun. So now within this email, it will be sent with SSL enabled. It will send a username of TomST and a password of 123. I'm not going to test this because I don't have it set up for it, but trust me that we have tried it with Office 365 and Gmail. And that email will be successful. So we've tested it out. I just wanted to touch now on this encryption feature that in this button right here. So we've tested it out. We don't want to leave my email password 123 in plain text in the system. So what this encryption button lets us do is one-way encrypt that once we've tested it, such that it's not human readable any longer. So we will see that the credential password is now an encrypted field. The VIP knows what to do with it, and it won't show up if somebody's perusing Designer or looking in tree files on the system. So it's one additional way you can secure that password information within the email module. Okay, and that is how you would send an authenticated email. I will just remove that because it's not something that Lotus Notes will let me do. Okay, so we've sent a simple email. We've covered how to send an authenticated email. The next topic is how to use an HTML template if you want something a little more formatted than what we saw. On the topic of some of these smart notifications, we may want to send a little bit more verbose or formatted an email to convey our message. And so for demonstration purposes, I have created a template and I have placed it in the VIP configuration directory. Now the reason I've placed it in the VIP configuration directory is I know that when I use the configuration management tool or I upgrade the system, that these files will come with us as a part of the configuration. So the particular HTML file here is, I've called it voltageunbalance.html. Now I could edit this in an HTML editor if I don't like looking at the markup. But essentially you can see there's a bolded message, alert, voltage unbalanced this month. There's a bit of a subject down here. And what I'll just do first off is just show you the HTML template in practice. If we move to the setup register that's called HTML template file, I just need to specify what that is now. I have put it in the root2 directory that I just showed you, and there's a shorthand way to get there, which is %vip-dir%. And this just makes your framework portable so that if we take this framework now to the next customer's machine and it's on the D drive, not the C drive, the VIPs will figure out where the VIP directory is. So I could type in verbosely :/directory my file, but by using this shorthand, it's portable and shorter to type as well, voltageunbalance.html. I have now specified an HTML file. If it can't find it, it won't go online, but I was successful in going online. I didn't make a typo. Let's trigger another email. I'll move back to my email. And now I've received a new one. And you can see all of a sudden I've got some HTML formatting. All of the fields aren't filled in, which is what I'm going to move to next. You can see voltage unbalanced this month, not available, and we'll see why in a moment. The company name, not available in my message, and this is just completely customizable, but I took a value of 2%, which was the reason for the alarm. For the meter name, which is currently not set up, so we're getting not available, and a message, which could be the consequences of this alarm, and this is where we start moving into smart notifications. And if you're a partner or if you're a Schneider execution center, you may have another link to or a phone number to provide information on the services you provide. It could be a link to a Vista diagram, etc. So you can really customize this message. So let's look now at filling in some of those fields. If we look again at the contents of the message, voltage unbalanced this month, %V1. If you're familiar with the alert module nomenclature on the ion devices, this is identical. This %V1 asks for, this will be replaced with the value at input 1 on the module. Similarly, where we saw the timestamp in the message, %T, it will replace that with the server local time. So it's the ability to place the timestamp within the message. Here, the company name, it says %V2, so that is the value at input 2. And then there's a %N1, which is referring to the name at input 1. So there's %V1 for the value at input 1 and %N1 for the name at input 1. So let's look at what that does in practice. %S I'll talk about shortly. We haven't linked any inputs yet. This is voltage unbalance. So in this case, let's link input 1 to our main meter, our 7650. And I know voltage unbalance on this meter is in the power meter module. Okay, and if I look at that input, we're seeing a value of 1 and a bit %. And then we had a source input 2 as the company name. There's another new module to talk about now, which is the external string module. It's analogous to an external numeric. It just stores a string constant. And what this allows us to do is, again, make our frameworks portable. If we just put here in this example the name of our company, the Acme Motor Company, and I now link this string register to input 2, we can see now that we're seeing a value of Acme Motor Company. So if I wanted to put company name in the email, and I build up a framework here, and I want to take it to the next customer's system, all I need to do is modify, once pasted on the second customer's system, modify this to Acme Motor Company 2, whatever the company name is. And that's the only change I need to do. So it just allows some flexibility there in the case of these messages. Let's trigger it again. We filled in some values. Back to our email. Here it is. Now we see something a little bit more. Voltage unbalance this month is 1.11. We can see our server local timestamp from the %T. We can see our company name from the external string module, Acme Motor Company 2. Voltage unbalance exceeded a value of 2%. It didn't quite, but you know what I've been doing with the manual trigger. For Victoria Bertram 7650, so that %N1 gave us the name of the device that the value came from when scanned at %T. Okay, so now we've actually filled in our email with some content. And maybe I want a percentage on this because that's not so clear. So let's just do that first. %V1%. So that'll clean that up on the next one. You might have seen a missing logo at the bottom. If you wanted to put in your company logo or the Schneider logo into the email, that is now possible. A couple of ways you could do it. You could binary encode it in your HTML template and do it that way. The other means of doing it is by attaching the image file. So in this case, %VIP dir % takes me to the VIP directory, and it's logo.png. So it's this file here, logo.png. There's my Power Monitoring Expert logo. And if I look at my voltage unbalance file at the bottom, I have an image which is set up for ID1, which will refer to the first attachment. So I have one attachment here so far, which is logo.png. So with that reference, and I send another email, Now I have my power monitoring expert logo in the corner. So we have our formatted email. Let's say we want to now provide some additional value in this report. Again, this is on the topic of smart notifications and trying to highlight some of the things that your power monitoring system is doing for you. And let's say we have our web reporter publishing a report periodically to a reports directory in PDF form. And for example purposes, I have put it in a directory called C reports, and I have a voltage unbalance trend report, which now lets you drill down in more detail in terms of what's been happening with voltage unbalance on your power monitoring system. And I want to include this in my email now. I have my logo, semicolon, C : / reports / Now I could verbosely type out voltage unbalance.pdf, but I can also just put in a wildcard of star, which will attach any files in this directory. Now the module will operate, it'll attach everything it can. If it has trouble attaching everything, it exceeds a size limit, it's going to send the email, but you may not have your attachments. So you do have to watch the size of the attachments that are going in when you engineer these solutions. In this case, I know I'm sending one file, it's not very big, and the shorthand star just means it will attach everything in that directory. Send and save. I trigger another email. And here's another one. I have my logo, and I have a PDF of my trend report. So I provided some additional context for further analysis when the email is received, so you can dig in and drive to root cause. So I hope it's clear so far. We've covered sending a simple notification, we've covered sending an authenticated email, how to start improving email notifications with HTML templates and providing more context and formatting, attaching attachments to your email. Now I want to talk about maintaining things such as email distribution lists in one place. In this example, we've been just using one module, which is easy to maintain. But let's take the case where we might have 100 of these modules, and you have a group of facility managers, a group of energy managers, or some combination of them that you want all these notifications to go to, or maybe it's 2 lists. And anytime somebody joins the group or leaves the group and you need to modify it, you would have to go into each module and adjust your to or your CC or your BCC, which is quite a lot of work. So we have the concept of an XML override file in this module, which essentially lets you take any of these setup registers and override it with this XML file. And in order to do this, you can go to your system etc. directory, and there's a template, email XML override template. So we copy this to our config directory for the VIP. And I'm just going to make it shorter for typing, email.xml. Let's open it up. Each of these elements, from, to, CC, BCC, SMTP server host, you will recognize they're the setup registers for this module. Anytime an element exists in here, it will try and override the actual program value in the setup register. So in this case, I am going to specify an override file, which is %vip dir% /email.xml. Now, just to show you that it works, I will take my to address and say nobody at nowhere.com, which does not exist. So I've specified a value in 2, but I've now also specified an XML override file. If I look at my override file, I will choose to override just my distribution list in this case, and remove all the elements I don't want to override. I won't send any blind carbons, and I won't send any carbons, but I will make my 2 legitimate. I save it. I'll save the framework. Now when I trigger this, I should get a business as usual email. And there it is. So what have I just done? I've basically kept my distribution list or distribution lists in a single XML file. If I create 100 modules and I use email.xml override on all those 100 modules, then with one file change in email.xml, I can update the distribution for whatever modules are associated with it. So I hope that illustrates the efficiency gain there as you move into more modules. There are other cases too. If you find that your secure email password is changing a lot, so if it's Gmail and every so often your password is changing, you may want to override your password. And the little encryption trick I showed you as well, if you just copy the encrypted value into the XML file, that will work as well. So you can also put an encrypted password in that XML file, and then maintain the user password, whatever it may be, in one place. I hope that's clear. Okay, we're getting near the end, but there's a couple other key things I want to show you. Let us take the case of alarm flooding. Let us associate one email module with our main meter, which is the 7650. Let's associate this second module with one of our subloads, which happens to be a PM8000, but we want voltage unbalance as well. And we need the second input to be our company name. And for illustrative purposes, I'm just going to trigger it from the same external pulse. And what I want to show now is the case where some kind of alarm happens, and let's say the voltage unbalance moves out of compliance on both the main meter and the subload at the same time, and it means you will get 2 emails. And let's just, for illustrative purposes, show this. Let's change the subject to PM8000 sub B unbound. And the first one, main 7650 B unbound alarm. So we put two alarms on it. So clearly when I trigger this case, must not have triggered it the first time. We can see that I got 2 alarms, one for my main and one for my subload. So I essentially had some alarm flooding happen there. If we wanted to control that, there's a couple things to do here. There is a setup register that is called notification wait period. This is the amount of seconds the module will wait before sending the email. So in this scenario we're talking about, let's say that if we receive an email for the main meter, we're okay to not receive one for one of the subloads. So we're willing to delay the subload email by 10 seconds. And if I successfully send the email about my main, I will link that to the cancel input of the second email module, which will pause for 10 seconds. So I should never receive two emails now if the main meter is successfully notified. However, if the main meter is not successfully notified, it's going to pulse the fail. I don't have anything linked there. And after 10 seconds, I will get notified from email 2. There they are. This time I only received it on my main. The other advantage of the notification wait register is to squash chatty alarms. So let's just set it to 15 seconds. What this will do is, again, delay the email by 15 seconds. And so what I'm doing here is I'm going to hit it 5 times. So let's say the alarm is chatty, and within that 15-second period, I get 5 triggers, and I don't want to receive 5 emails in a row. So it gives you a little bit. There it is. Now you can see what happened here. It gave me the summary email, all the triggers it received in that 15-second period, and it gave me the software timestamp of when each of those triggers happened. You can call this out with that %S I would have shown you in the HTML template earlier. And the message it applies is the one that's in the setup register for just the plain message, so you can customize that as well. So we've talked about how to aggregate triggers over a time period, in this case 15 seconds, and how you can use that time period as well to implement a cancel or an alarm flooding framework. Troubleshooting. Very quickly, the management console will have system log events for what is happening. In this case, we had a pretty successful run. We can see email module 1 sent successfully, email 2 sent successfully. Looks like we did have a timeout in there somewhere. So these things are all captured in the system log when things go right, when things go wrong. It'll also write it to the event log, and it's controlled by the event log priority that's in the module. But the management console is good for diagnosing what's happening with your notifications. So lastly, the email approach you can take, because with Power Monitoring Expert 8, we now have some basic email capabilities built into the platform. You can imagine when we start moving into large systems that the sheer number of modules would start to get heavy on the maintenance. So we still have the E&M in the offer. So when we start talking about more than 100 modules, we test it to 500, but when you start reaching those thresholds, it's probably more effective to move to E&M for maintenance purposes. So one decision criteria in your design is, how large a system are we? If we think we've got, a smaller number of notifications, it may make sense to do it this way. If it's a large number of notifications or different notification groups and some of the values that E&M brings, then you may want to consider E&M. It can also be a hybrid. Because of the HTML template formatting, when you see the database import module in a subsequent video, you'll start to see some of the smart notification values emerge. So you may want a hybrid. You may want to have a few smart notifications to identify issues in the system, but for your day-to-day alarming, you may use E&M. So it can be a combination of those things. Okay, so I've covered the topics I wanted to cover for the first VIP module video for the email module. I hope you've enjoyed watching. I hope you leverage this module to its fullest, and I look forward to hearing about your experiences. Thanks. Bye.